friends. Tessa Timberlake here with Soulful Conversations. Today, you get to listen to Troy Wyne, all of his wisdom about bodybuilding, nutrition, massage therapy, cryotherapy, aromatherapy, all the therapies, right? But what he does specifically is he is a massage therapist, and he brings in this device called the Dolphin Method, and it's used for scar tissue and reducing pain, so it's very useful. But yeah, he just brings a lot of passion, and I think you'll enjoy it.
Hi, friends. Tessa Timberlake here with Soulful Conversations, exploring our inner light. Today, I'm joined by Troy Wyne, a former professional bodybuilder turned holistic healer. Troy is the founder of results-oriented massage and the creator of the Wyne Method of common sense pain management. His approach blends deep awareness and the Dolphin Method to help people find lasting relief. Beyond his work in pain management, Troy is a devoted husband and father, embracing a life of faith, clean living, and holistic wellness. In this episode, we'll take a more personal journey into his story, his evolution from bodybuilding to healing, his beliefs about health and longevity, and his wisdom that he's gained along the way. Troy, welcome to Soulful Conversations. I'm so excited to have you. Thanks for spending time with us.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah. So the first question I always ask everyone is, tell us what you do and why you do it.
Well, that's evolved more recently. What I do now is, which is constantly evolving. I started taking courses by a man called James Wozlaski. And prior to that, I did a lot of neuromuscular therapy, which was releasing trigger points. It was deeper massage. And I started taking James Wozlaski's courses, which are more osteopathic based. And that has really transformed my practice and my profession, because it's more joint releasing, scar tissue release, mobilization of joints, fascial restrictions. And a great example of that is a lot of people have pain patterns that are caused by having ligaments which hold the bones together that are stressed. And if you can take the stress off of the ligaments, all the bones that were or all the muscles that were tight and fascia that was tight in that area, usually it was tight to protect those ligaments and keep them from breaking, because that holds your structure together. And so if you take the pressure off the ligaments, the supporting cast, the muscles, and the fascia just release themselves. A lot of the techniques are a lot more kind than what I used to use, because you don't have to go in and really dig into these deeper trigger points to release those. And by doing a more generalized release of the joint itself, a lot of the supporting cast, the muscles, the ligaments, and soft tissue just get the message that they don't have to be tight to protect those ligaments. And then also incorporating the Dolphin into my practice, which is right now is the gold standard for scar tissue release. And not just scar tissue, but it's a microcurrent that repairs scar tissue, is the best way that I can describe it. I have seen absolutely amazing results with it. I have a few patients who've had knee replacements where after 8 to 12 visits, you can't even see their scar.
Wow.
The scar visibility is not really the thing that you want to work on or use as your standard. You're really more interested in the scar tissue that's happening below the surface. But if it's causing the scar tissue to disappear, the scar to disappear on the surface, imagine what's happening below the surface. The Dolphin is amazing because it speeds up the mitochondria's production of ATP at the cellular level. So even if you don't have scar tissue, let's say you have a ligament which heals really slowly, they get very, very little blood supply. They're one of the slowest healing things in the body. but the Dolphin's amazing for speeding up the healing in ligaments because you produce more ATP in that area.
He is breaking down some personal training, anatomy, words, ATP, and mitochondria. I love it. And I'll ask him to go over those words later if we have some folks on here that doesn't understand that. So,
well, actually, if you want to cover those now, because we're there, mitochondria, most people's mitochondria really basically is the powerhouse, the factory. It's the part of the cell that does the work. And ATP is cellular energy, basically. Without ATP, nothing happens. So your mitochondria produces ATP, and ATP makes everything happen. Without ATP, there are no changes on the cellular level.
it's so good. It's so good. Nerd alert, right? We love it so much. That was one of the most difficult things when I was trying to pass the NASM, National Athletic Sports Medicine Personal Training Certification. I love to learn the why. So let's keep on rolling with questions. So you were a professional bodybuilder. I did not know that.
Well, not professional. I never got a pro card. I was a massage therapist and a personal trainer when I started bodybuilding. I was working at a chiropractor's 9 to noon and 3 to 6, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I was at the gym on the other days. Sometimes during that 3-hour lunch break, I go there and do personal training or a massage, or I would do calls. I mean, I was working a lot. And the guy who owned the gym, Mark Perry, he'd been bodybuilding for years, and he approaches me one day and he's like, Troy, there's a bodybuilding show in 16 weeks. You should start dieting and do it. I'm like, Mark, I'm not interested. 14 weeks, he says, Troy, this bodybuilding show in 14 weeks. You're already in decent shape. You should start dieting and do that show. Mark, I'm not interested. 13 weeks, he said, Troy, this is absolutely the last week that you can start dieting to do the show. And I was like, you know what? All right, let's do it. No, I had never been to a bodybuilding show. I'd never seen one. If I'd seen one, I'd have probably been like, oh my gosh, no way I'm doing that. But next thing you know, I'm dieting for the show. I am cutting body fat. I'm getting lean. I'm looking good. I go do my first show. It's crazy. I got first and second because I competed in the open and the novice, lightweight open and lightweight novice. And after the show, one of the judges approaches me and says, hey, I'm doing a show next week. Do you want to do the show? And I was thinking, no, not really. I've been dieting 13 weeks. I want to start eating what I want. I looked at Mark, and Mark looks at me and he goes, Troy, eat anything you want tonight and go back on your diet tomorrow. You'll be fine. Did that, went into the next show, got like second and second. And I was thinking, okay, this is over. And same thing, repeat. One of the other judges, I've got a show in 2 weeks. Do you want to come do that? And I was thinking, not really. And Mark is like, Troy, eat anything you want today, eat anything you want tomorrow, go back on your diet, you'll be fine. There again, same thing, first, second, whatever, but always doing really well, thinking I'm done. And then Mark looks at me and says, hey, in 2 weeks, I'm going to do a show that's going to be on ESPN in St. Louis.
Wow.
Goes, why don't you go with me? Okay. He goes, eat anything you want tonight, anything you want tomorrow night, go back on your diet. So that's what I did. We went to St. Louis, did the show. Crazy thing, though. The body's an amazing thing. So I do that show. I'm like, oh my gosh. I just want to eat whatever I want. I want to do whatever I want. And I remember gaining 31 pounds in like 36 hours because I was just eating crazy stuff, brats and Arby's French dip subs 2 at a time, Dairy Queen Snickers Blizzards. And I gained like 31 pounds in 36 hours and I could not move. I mean, I remember getting home from St. Louis laying flat on my back on the bed and thinking, oh my gosh, if I have to pee, it's going to be a waterbed because I can't move. And The next morning I get up and I had already dropped about 8 pounds of that weight because it was all water weight from eating all those carbs. I went back on just a semi-normal diet, maintained about 15 pounds over my competition weight, and stayed there and looked good, felt good. But a lot of that was because I was eating a lot of the wrong things all at once and just taking them in, and my body was revolting. It just didn't like it. It's one of those things where you learn as you go along. I did those 4 shows in 6 weeks, which is incredibly hard. And then later that year, I went to work on the cruise ships, and I came back 8 months later to do my taxes from that year and ended up doing 2 more bodybuilding shows while I was on a break from the cruise ships. And then I thought it was crazy because at the time I was meditating and doing all these spiritual things. Bodybuilding is it's almost counterintuitive to meditate or, to spiritual lifestyle, but I'm still doing the workouts, but I'm just not competing. Now I've got 2 young children, like a 5-year-old son and a 4-year-old daughter. And there's no way you can't bodybuild with young children and work full time. And it's too hard. I mean, you can, but it's really hard to do those things. So, so bodybuilding is on a back burner for me.
Right. So you put your feet in it pretty well.
I mean, I never dabbled in steroids. A lot of people always looked at me and said, "Oh, you obviously do steroids." And I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about, because, this is all hard work. And, because that's the thing about bodybuilding is you have to be disciplined, because it's not just putting the work in the gym. It's putting the time in the gym. It's eating the 6 to 7 meals a day. It's, making sure you're getting enough sleep. It's having the discipline to not only work out, but then practice your posing for an hour a day and then come up with a posing routine, which is a lot harder than it sounds, especially when you have to pick a song and put your routine to the music. It's a tough thing. It requires a lot of effort. There's a reason these guys who are pros, that's all they do. They don't work. They're just pro bodybuilders. And, because it can be a full-time job. And if you're doing it to be competitive at a pro level, that's the only thing you can do. You can't do anything else.
Wow. I had no idea that you had to create music with your poses. I just thought that the poses were the same as everyone else does, but I don't know much about bodybuilding.
Yeah, well, see, that's the thing. You're not supposed to be judged on. It's almost like doing 2 shows in a day, because you go out and you do your mandatories where you line up with all the people in your weight class and they judge you, and doing 8 basic poses. And then there's some optional poses, and there's a break, and you come back in the evening and you don't do the mandatory poses. You do the individual 1-minute routine to music. And then after everybody in their weight class does their routine, then they bring everybody out and hand out trophies. So it's everybody that wins a class competes at the end for the overall title.
Wow. That's a lot of judging. That word sits uncomfortable with me.
You have to be extremely disciplined and be on point all the time. You have to do everything right all the time. I saw a guy one time at one of the shows. They changed the order of the show. So we're at this show, and I've known this guy. I've seen him in like 4 or 5 other shows. He and I were backstage kind of helping each other out, looking out for each other, because that's what you do backstage. There's a lot of camaraderie there. And he had been told that he wasn't going back on stage for like another hour. So he puts on some sweats and he goes out into the audience and starts watching the show. Well, they had called a meeting and had changed the order of the show. They were like 3 people from his number. And I realized what's happening. I go, oh my gosh, he's out in the audience. I run out in the audience and I said, dude, do you not realize you're on stage in 2 minutes? He panicked. This was the best looking guy. He was a physique guy. He had the best physique. He had he had vascular abs running, or veins running up to his abs. Like you could see all his vascularity in his abs, which is an absolute sign that you've done everything right. His routine was down. He was perfect. He was on point. But when he panicked, and I was like, listen, just breathe, relax. And I was helping him get all of his spray, not his spray tan, but oiled up so that he'd look good on stage, touching him up real quick before he runs out there. The stress from the cortisol, from the stress, I watched him. It looked like somebody had taken a trial and filled in his abs. This dude was vascular, ab definition, but the stress, he looked like he had just eaten 12 donuts and a gallon of water, and he hadn't done any of those things, but it was the cortisol that he released because he went into panic mode.
That is an amazing fact. And I appreciate that you said that, because that's my passion, is talking about stress and how to release it and how to, stay focused in your mental health. Right. So that's amazing.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But, that's the thing. Most people don't realize how sensitive their bodies are. If they did, they would be a lot more careful about the things that they put into their bodies, or even put around their bodies. Everything from what you listen to the actual fabrics that you wear, to the fabric softener in your clothes, all of those, the scented body spray.
Yes.
Right? All of those
the candles
disrupt your hormones. They're all loaded with hormone disruptors, and people wonder why their hormones are disrupted. And it's like, well, you came in here smelling like a can of body spray. I mean, you smell good, but you're killing yourself, because what most people don't realize is that one of the fastest ways to toxify the body is through breathing. And because a lot of those things go straight into the blood, into the brain.
Amen.
And
I thought this was going to be a conversation about massage therapy and some clean eating, but this is so good. Just keep on going, because this is the stuff that I talk about all the time. And I feel like I share too much because people don't listen.
right.
People, I mean, I don't know that they don't listen. I don't think they listen. I'm going to tell a quick story back to the whole smelling thing. So my girls used to be in an environment that wasn't mine, right? And when they would come back from that environment, when they would get into my car, I could smell the plugins on them. I could smell it on them when they got into my car. If that doesn't tell you that that is toxic, I don't know what else to say. Like, it almost used to make me vomit every time they would get in the car.
Well, I mean, even going back to what you said about candles. I mean, Yankee Candles in Williamsburg closed. I hope you don't mind. I'm going to take a little liberty here.
Go ahead.
Okay, so Yankee Candles closed, but I'd walk in there, and in 5 minutes I had to leave because I had such a headache.
Yes.
Right? And but years ago I did a course, and so backing this train up a little bit further, when I was on the cruise ships, I was a massage therapist and a personal trainer, and we sold products. A lot of them were aromatherapy products. And one of my big things was I educated myself really well on aromatherapy products. And then I would teach aromatherapy seminars and do offer aromatherapy consultations. Where people would, I would teach a bare bones class, sign people up, then they would come in and sit down with me for 15 minutes after they fill out a consultation of what they wanted to work on in their lives. And I'd present them with things that they could work on and let them smell products and see how fast they worked. And part of my education there, I was doing a continuing education course in aromatherapy, and the doctor, this talks about ties in a lot of things really quick. The first chapter, this doctor was talking about how all essential oils and aromatherapy products could be chemically reproduced. And he said that the example he used was lemongrass. And he said lemongrass is one of the most healing things on the planet right now. One of the most healing for overall. If you've got Hashimoto's or some other thyroid disorders, lemongrass is one of the most important things that you could add into your life. And so one of the things that he talked about was how you could take real lemongrass and heal from it. But if you took it to a lab, they could break it down into 40 components, because I don't want to say the wrong thing, but you could reproduce it with 40 things. Now, 28 of those things that make up 80% of lemongrass are very toxic to humans. Those 28 things gave it the smell. Those 12 things that only make up 20% were the ones that neutralized the toxicity and gave it its therapeutic value, but they were the ones that were expensive to reproduce. So when you're talking...
It's all about money.
Well, and it goes even further. Like, I had a lady one time, I used to have a diffuser in my room that right now I had run diffusers in my room the whole time I'm in here, and I put colloidal silver and thieves essential oil in my diffuser as a way of personal protection and protection for my clients, right? I diffuse that in my treatment rooms, right? But I used to use just straight eucalyptus, and I had a diffuser under the table, and it was straight eucalyptus. I mean, you could smell it. It was seeping under my door out into the reception area. This lady comes in that I'd never seen before, and she says to me, she goes, "I am highly allergic to eucalyptus." It's too late now. She's already in the room. If she's really allergic to eucalyptus, she's going to be dead in the next minute, the way she's talking about it, right? She is like, "I am very highly allergic to eucalyptus. We've already discussed how breathing things gets into the brain very quickly. So if she was going to go into anaphylaxis, if she was really, truly allergic to eucalyptus, she would have been dead, right? Or in anaphylactic shock." But I just looked at her, and rather than tell her, she was standing in a room where I was diffusing eucalyptus. I mean, it was so strong, you could smell it down the hallway. And she goes, "Please don't use anything with eucalyptus. I can't have eucalyptus in the room." And I'm thinking, okay. She was so paranoid about it that I was not about to tell her that there was eucalyptus in the diffuser, because I couldn't, right? Yep. She would have panicked. She would have freaked out. She would have probably sent herself into anaphylaxis.
Yes.
Though there was no physical reaction. So I just let her go through the entire session telling me how allergic she was. But when I asked her how she knew she was allergic to eucalyptus, here's the funny part. She says, "I know that I'm allergic to eucalyptus because when I go down the crafts aisle where they have the eucalyptus branches, I can't breathe." And I was like, oh boy. So basically, if they have eucalyptus branches that they shipped here from, Australia, they're spraying them chemically to keep them smelling like eucalyptus. It's not rocket science here. She's allergic to the chemical. She wasn't allergic to the eucalyptus. She was so ingrained in her thought that there was no point in trying to tell her that that was not true. Yep. So I just let her go. I really wanted to educate her on, give her some facts. But some people you can't do that with. You just have to leave them in their beliefs, because especially in this situation, because she was already exposed to the eucalyptus before she told me she was allergic to it.
Yep. People just don't understand. I said, people don't understand, and then they don't try to understand.
Well, it goes back to that ignorance is bliss thing, right?
Yes.
She obviously was dedicated to that. She was so grounded in that there was no way I could change her mind. And I knew that. And I wasn't even going to try, because it was only going to cause me problems. And so I walked away from it. But it's interesting that not enough people today really take the time to look at the things that they're putting in themselves. And when I say in themselves, I'm talking about everything from, the soaps and shampoos that you're using, because some of that's going through your skin, to the food that you're eating, the water that you're drinking, the different types of clothing that you wear, and the list goes on and on and on. And all of these things disrupt us on some level. We are supposed to be a lot healthier than we are, but when you look around, a lot of people, all they want to talk about is what medications they're on, what doctor's appointments they have. And it's almost like a rite of passage. This is my doctor, and these are the 14 things that I'm taking. And I'm not knocking doctors, because, they have a viable place in our society, but they should not, shouldn't have that big a role in our lives. We shouldn't be medicating for everything.
Yep.
Food should be thy medicine.
Yes.
Exercise, sunlight, controlling the things that you're taking in, from the things that you're wearing, the things that you're breathing, the things that you're eating, the things that you're drinking, all of those, and also the things that you're allowing to stress you. All of those things impact your life on some level.
Yep. I have not had the pleasure of having a nutritionist or a dietitian on the podcast yet. And so I know you know a lot about food. So let's continue.
Okay. Well, so, the funny thing is, years ago, I was on a radio show too, and the lady invited me on the show to talk about, I had pulled like 56 tires out of the creek where I was living, right? And she was like, Troy, if you just read about that in the newspaper, will you come on my radio show and talk about it? Funny thing is, I had to be there 3 times before we actually talked about the tires, because we'd start talking about diet or exercise. And she would start asking me questions. And next thing you know, well, we had 15 minutes allotted and we're at 45 minutes. We've got to do this again. Let's have you back, talk about the tires. And we did that 3 times. I was on her radio show 3 times before we actually talked about the tires and how bad they are for the environment, tires in the water and stuff. But the funny thing is, and the reason I'm referencing this is, she asked me what the number one dietary thing that I could give right now, what would be the one thing that I could recommend to the most people. And now, this was 8 years ago. This was before this became, like common knowledge. I was like, you've got to get away from seed oils, right?
Yes.
That is probably, now that's like everywhere. You can read that anywhere. But I was just like, because what people don't realize is it's more than just cooking with these oils. Like, if you're this is where it gets really dangerous. A lot of these oils become carcinogenic when heated.
Mm-hmm.
And so think about fryer oil for chicken nuggets and French fries. It could be any fast food restaurant, right? But the fryer oil, so they're constantly just dumping oil into oil that's already heated 24 hours a day. And the longer you put heat to these oils, the more carcinogenic they become, which means causing cancer.
Yep.
And so, oh my gosh, if you're just reheating the same oil all the time, you're making it more and more and more carcinogenic. By the end of the week, it's compounded, is my point.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if you're going to cook with oils, or you're going to eat food that's been, heated in oils, olive oil on low heat, coconut oil can take high heat, walnut oil can take high heat. Let me see, there's a couple more. What is but But basically, you're getting the gist. You need to stay away from the canola oil, which is because it's all about the omega-6s in them. They're very highly inflammatory. Omega-6s are very highly inflammatory, but any of those highly inflammatory oils are also carcinogenic, like canola oil when it's heated, canola oil, corn oil, vegetable oil. These are things that were never meant to be used for human consumption. I mean, most of these things, cottonseed oil especially, I mean, a lot of these things were industrial oils. They were used in industrial applications. And now people are putting them in their bodies. And it's like, hold on, what? Why? Why would you want to do that? That is not a good idea. I mean, it's a horrible idea, right? None of that stuff should be in the food aisle. It shouldn't be in the food aisle. You should have to find that over on the car section.
You want to talk about soda? Let's talk about soda.
Well, so more than soda, how about empty calories? When you're looking at foods that are, yes, highly processed, but they're not contributing anything in the form of micros, macros, right? They're
right.
Ultra processed and empty calories. It's just really high in sugar. One of the interesting things that I've been hearing recently, I've been listening to a lot of podcasts and things from like Eric Berg and some of these other people who have big degrees in nutrition, talking about how they have known for 70 years that sugar is one of the most deadly things, like white table sugar, that you can consume in your body, because when you take it in, it actually attacks, what was he saying? Somehow in the process, it ends up in your bone marrow and affecting your white blood cell count. It reduces your white blood cell count, which for those people that don't know, your white blood cells is your immune system.
Right.
It's literally attacking your immune system. And if you think about going back to sodas, if you've ever seen a picture of a can of soda with the amount of sugar that's in that one can right next to it, it's like 40% or something of that can is like sugar. Right? 30%, 40%, whatever it is. I think because it's going to vary, like Mountain Dew is really high in sugar, higher than some of the other ones. So, when you think about it from that perspective, but when you put it all together, let's say looking at how much sugar and empty calories are in that soda that you're getting from a fast food restaurant, at the same time that you're supersizing a load of fries, at the same time that you're going to be healthy. So now you're eating a fried chicken sandwich, right? It was cooked in the fryer next to, or you're like, oh, I don't want to eat the bread, so I'm going to have a 20-piece nugget, that were fried. So now you have all these things that are fried in seed oils, and which are really high in omega-6s and fried carbohydrates in the fries and in the breading, and then all the chemicals that they use to stabilize those food-like substances, actually. And then you're going to drink literally a big gulp of soda next to it to wash it down. I mean, it's no wonder people are sick.
Yeah, and they're immune to it. Like, they've been doing it for so long. It's habitual, right?
Well, just thinking about it, when I was a kid, we would go to this state park in Indiana called Brown County State Park, and we would take 5 horses and we would go to the state park, and then we would ride all day and end up going to this place called Hidden Valley. Basically, it's like this little snack shop. So you've had breakfast, and now your lunch after riding for 3 or 4 hours was like some kind of packaged snack cake, right? Like a Suzy Q or Twinkies and a can of soda. Holy cow, looking back at that. And then we didn't eat until dinner, a can of Mountain Dew, and then all of this garbage food, basically, going back to empty calories. there's almost no nutritional value in any of that stuff.
Nope, not at all. Not at all. We have about 15, 17 more minutes left. And I want to get back to your actual story and why you're here. But I want to talk about cryotherapy just for a minute because
Okay.
I love it. And then I want you to tell everyone about the Dolphin Method and why you use it. And then from that, tell people how they can find you. Okay. So cryotherapy, Dolphin, how they find you.
Okay, so with the cryotherapy, I have done ice baths. The funny thing about bodybuilding is every time you prep for a show, your body gets used to it. So the things that you have to do, I don't want to say become more extreme, but you have to trick your body into burning more fat because, once it's done it, like it's it's one of those things where once it gets used to it, you have to do something else to break those plateaus. And that's how I found doing ice baths. And that was in 1999, is the first time I did an ice bath. And I would fill the tub with cold water, throw in a 20-pound bag of ice and jump in. And not having any experience, I would just sit in there laying down, trying to get as much coverage as I could for up to 10 minutes because that was how long it took to melt the ice, to get it all melted. And that was my experience with ice bathing was mainly during competition, mainly to cut body fat, because there's no faster way to cut body fat than cold water immersion. And without getting too complicated, it's very simple, because people were like, oh my gosh, aren't you hypothermic? Yes, you're going to induce a mild state of hypothermia. But what that does is it stresses the body in a good way, because then your body says, let's mobilize your brown fat. And your brown fat is fat that surrounds your organs, that only activates and burns calories in times of like freezing to death, like hypothermia. So when you're in cold water for a certain amount of time, your body starts, the brown fat in your body, to warm up your organs and keep them functioning. That brown fat starts to burn calories just like muscles. And so it's raising your core body temperature. So you're burning like and very rapidly, because its job is to warm those organs and keep them warm, get them back to normal temperature as quickly as possible. So your body is burning through calories like nobody's business. You'll burn 2 to 3, 4 times more calories in a day than you normally do. And that was the extent of my knowledge of ice bathing for years. I would just use it during competition. So a year and a half ago, I bought an ice pod, and I would fill this thing up with water and put up to somewhere between 40 and 60 pounds of ice in it and climb in. And, my window when I do ice baths right now is 6 minutes. So recently I've been looking at other reading and researching, and if you've ever heard of Wim Hof, Wimhof, this dude's insane. He does ice baths almost every day. He climbed Mount Everest in shorts, a t-shirt, and tennis shoes, and then ran a marathon the next day. The dude's in incredible shape, and ice bathing is the way he did it. I did not realize that ice baths impact your immune system, because when you're doing that many ice baths and your body's actually looking for fuel, a lot of times it'll eat up bacteria and viruses in the body because it just turns them into fuel. And there have been a lot of studies on this. I can't recall his name right now, but anyway, this guy, he was researching this, and he actually injected himself, and so did Wim Hof. Wim Hof injected himself with a virus, and then he never got sick because his body ate it, because he was doing these ice baths every day. But the other thing the body is so good at with an ice bath is that you have in 3 minutes in an ice bath, you'll have a 300% increase in dopamine production. And dopamine's a feel-good hormone, right? So you for a lot of people who are, depressed or, have some anxiety or something, ice bathing may be your answer. And, I was watching a podcast the other day about, not everybody has the ability or the time to do an ice bath. So a lot of people started doing cold showers. And one of these famous doctors that I was watching was talking about, people not sleeping well. And he said, if you want to sleep better, he was talking about doing a contrast shower where you go in and you take a hot shower, then you throw it down into cold for 30 seconds.
Yep.
And he goes, you do that, you'll sleep like a baby.
Yep. There was a bodybuilder that I knew in Midlothian when I worked up there. And he turned me on to hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold. And that's when I started learning about cryotherapy and inflammation, right?
Right, absolutely.
So, yep.
And I didn't even mention that, being in an ice bath is a full body anti-inflammatory.
Yep.
I mean, there are so many benefits to it that, I think it's one of the number one things that we can do for our bodies. And I love the philosophy. The philosophy was Wim Hofer's, and those are people that follow Wim Hof, who I mentioned earlier, is, you've got to get comfortable being uncomfortable.
I was just about to say, it's all about, you think you're suffering, it's all in your mind. And in the beginning, it is a little bit of suffering, but going through a little bit of suffering, you come out on the other side grittier and stronger with fresher perspective and a healthier body.
Well, and the thing is with with an ice bath, the first 10 seconds are bad. After that, it's just doing time. A lot of people were like, Troy, what do you listen to? You're always posting these pictures of you in the ice bath. What do you listen to while you're in the ice bath? And and I'm going to shout out to Jelly Roll, because Jelly Roll was my ice bathing music. I'll put on Spotify with Jelly Roll, and I know that by the time I get through my second song, the ice bath is over. I've done my 6 minutes, and my wife is always like, well, Troy, 3 minutes is good. I'm like, yeah, but 6 minutes is better. And she's like, it's not always that way. And I said, well, prove that 6 minutes isn't good. And it turns out that 3 to 6 minutes is the optimal time for ice bathing, right? To be in an ice bath. And that's where you maximize your benefits. I've gone longer, but there's really no reason to. And
right.
You need to stay within your parameters.
Yeah. Not allow the ego to take over, right?
Absolutely. Keep it to 3 minutes, then work it up. Do your 6 minutes if that's what you're going to do. But know that you have to get out, because, the whole idea is to make sure that it's a minor case of hypothermia.
Right.
And doesn't become a major case of hypothermia where, you start having heart palpitations or whatever. You need to make sure that you are within healthy guidelines and that you don't have heart problems. If you have a pacemaker, if you're already prone to AFib or these other things, you need to work to get that controlled and then consult your doctor and all those other things. Because I'm not advocating that everybody go out here and jump into, cold water with heart problems, because that's absolutely not where we're going. You need to make sure that you're doing it in a healthy way. Also, the other thing is, if you're going to do an ice bath, make sure you have somebody with you, because if you do get in trouble, they can help pull you out, get you warm, get you to a good situation if you need to. So don't bath alone, ice bathe alone.
Yeah.
Those would be my recommendations.
Thank you so much for explaining all that. Let's move on to the Dolphin Method.
Okay. So the dolphin uses its 2 wands that use microcurrents. And those microcurrents are, one of the wands is set on a negative, the other one's on a negative positive alternating current, or biphasic. And so you put those two currents make contact with the skin, and where those two currents meet, everything in the middle speeds up. Like the mitochondria's production of ATP speeds up. So if you have a ligament that was damaged, it's going to heal quicker. If you have scar tissue, it's going to help dissolve that scar tissue. If you have just ischemic tissue, tissue that's not as healthy as it should be, that needs some healing, it's going to speed up the healing of that tissue. And so a couple of stories about it very quickly. I just got it brand new, went to Indiana on vacation. I was staying in my Aunt Brenda's house, me and my family. I asked her if I could use the Dolphin on her, and she said, sure. And she goes, Troy, this toe, I've had toe surgery, and her big toe was crossing over the next toe. She had already had surgery on it 2 years before. She was having pain. It would wake her up throbbing in the middle of the night. She would stand on it with her other foot. She would stand on it and pull it. Nothing made it better. She gone to the doctor, and they're like, oh, everything's fine. And she's like, well, then why is it waking me up if it's fine? Right? So I swear to God, I wish I had videotaped this session, because her toe, in 5 minutes with the Dolphin, her big toe, where she had a 4-inch scar down the top of it, straightened out. It moved back into place. It was no longer crossing over her toe. 5-minute session, and she's never had pain with it again. I was like, oh my gosh. Now, I'm going to qualify this and say that the feet and hands tend to have the least amount of fat in the body. So electrical currents pass through those very quickly. So, and at the highest rate. So what I see the most success with the Dolphin, I shouldn't say the most success, because I've seen some other great things, but that to me was the thing that I could see the quickest, because I could actually see the improvement. Her toe straightened out like in 5 minutes, and it went straight. And she's like, I'll call Brendan. I'll be like, hey, Brendan, what's going on? And I'll be like, hey, how's your toe? Troy, I haven't had a bit of problem with it since you dolphined it. And it's
That's
like,
amazing.
what? If I had known that was going to be it, I swear I'd have video. That would have been my YouTube video right there.
Right?
I would have walked away and been like, just send my royalties down to this island, because I'm done.
Well, I have an ankle you can work on.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. Feet, ankles, and hands are the things that tend to respond the quickest. Now, I've also seen amazing results in other areas. Like I had a guy who, this is actually the most important one. I had a guy whose right ilium kept rolling forward. And I would work on him every week and try to get it back. He was 35. He was in great shape. The dude did CrossFit type workouts, but he was like, man, my pelvis is always wrecked. I, at the time, didn't have a Dolphin, but I had a friend. I'm going to shout out to Stephanie Reed, who's a great massage therapist in Kilmarnock also. She had a Dolphin, and I said, listen, go do this, because this guy had an inguinal hernia. So keep mesh on that hernia repair. And the mesh was what was actually, the scar tissue through the mesh was not allowing that ilium to stay in place. I sent him over to her. She dolphined it. Then he'd come over to me. I release it. The next week he comes in. His ilium's in place. It stayed. He did the Dolphin like 3 times, the scar tissue over top of his mesh, 3 visits. And
that's amazing.
Staying in place. That is scar tissue through mesh.
That's amazing. That is just really amazing.
I had no idea if it would work. I was just like, I said, listen, I was grasping at straws, because I knew how bad scar tissue is and how hard it is to fight scar tissue, because I actually scar tissue is what I tore my tricep off the bone from scar tissue. And we'll probably we're out of time, I'm sure, but maybe we can talk about that next time, about scar tissue and how bad that is for the body. And but I literally tore my tricep off the bone and had it surgically repaired because of a prior accident where I had glass trapped at my elbow from a car accident. Right. But anyway, and then how many ever years later, that tricep just popped. I was just working out one day and it just snapped. And it was the scar tissue. If I had had a dolphin, if I had had somebody around me that knew how to use a dolphin, who could have dolphined it, totally preventable.
That's crazy. That's insane. And I had no idea how it worked, but I knew from my mother-in-law that it had worked, right? And if you can get my mother-in-law on board, you really got something going on. So how can people find you, Troy?
Okay. My business is results-oriented massage, but if you're looking to make an appointment, a text message is usually the quickest way, because I am my own secretary. But my phone number is 804-815-5836.
Well, that's amazing. I will say that he created a DVD series that we should have been talking about, but it's called The Wyne Method of Common Sense in Pain Management. It's on Amazon if you want to check that out. I've seen it firsthand. And then he's in 2 locations. He's in Gloucester, Virginia, and then he's also in Kilmarnock, Virginia. Which days are you?
Like Tuesdays and Fridays, I'm in the White Marsh Shopping Center of Gloucester. And then Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, my office location is 25 Augusta in Kilmarnock.
Gotcha. Well, we are definitely going to have Mr. Wyne back because there's so much education. I'm super excited about it. Thank you so much, Troy, for being here and giving us your wisdom. And I look forward to having you back.
Well, thank you for having me.